And we're back with another episode of Inside Sports Fantasy Football. It's Gerald Glassford from Inside Sports, the Lakers Fast Break podcast, and also Pop Culture Cosmos. Thank you for listening to each and every one of our great shows. Well, he's back again after a couple-week absence. He's back in spirit. No more. He's actually live and in living color right here. He is one of the great voices behind Voice from the Underground. You got to check out their awesome podcast each and every week today on every major podcast outlet. It is a good man indeed. He returns to us once again at Inside Sports Fantasy Football. It's Jasen Dutch. Welcome back, my friend.
What's happening?
Not much. Good to have you with you. A very interesting week 7 in the NFL. I thought some things were kind of shifting towards a different type of avenue in regards to some of the things that we're seeing in regards to the NFL overall. The Lions, everybody's picked to start really going up, and Matthew Stafford, everybody was really enjoying what he was offering. Still is doing very well.
They just get screwed every time.
Yeah, well, that's another issue altogether.
It's got to be. Look, just real quick on that. I'm a Cubs fan.
Yeah.
So Detroit, I feel your pain, but I mean, how many times? How many times are the refs going to take wins away from you guys? When this starts happening to the Packers and the Patriots, then I'll believe the NFL has no bias.
Well, it certainly happened to the Chargers this past weekend.
That's not the Packers or the Patriots. You know, you will never see that happen to Brady or Rodgers ever. It's just poor Matt Stat, poor Detroit.
Well, I'll tell you what, he's still having
Detroit again. Yeah, and poor Detroit again. I mean, we'll talk about it, but they just had to put their starting running back on IR.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course there's a big injury that we're talking about here in a second.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this first though. Is there anything that surprised you overall in the NFL that stood out in week 7 from a number standpoint? I mean, because the Cowboys, they came back to life after some really struggling weeks back there. I think we went on like a 2 or 3 game schneid, and already, Jason Garrett's eternally hot seat was getting hot once again, but they actually performed very well against the Eagles, which I'm going to tell you right now, my friend, I think the Eagles that went all the way to the Super Bowl, I think that team is gone and left the building, my friend.
Yeah, poor Charles. That's his team. And thanks to Charles for filling in for a couple weeks.
Absolutely.
Charles is really good. I mean, he does a great job. He's more of a football guy. I'm more of a fantasy football guy. So, he breaks down stuff real well. So thank you to him. And we can't wait to have him back, I'm sure. But his team, the Eagles, is not their offense is supposed to be okay. I mean, on paper, it seems to be a running theme across the National Football League this year, where you've got these teams that are supposed to be really good. If you remember, what was it? The Buccaneers defense some years back coined the term paper champions, talking about somebody, and they might've been talking about themselves. And I always remembered that line. I don't remember who said it, but the paper champions, I mean, it's the Rams and the Eagles are like 1, 2, and then the Bears, are right there too. There's a lot of teams that are on paper have really strong offenses. Look at the Bears offense. I mean, you would think that Mitchell Trubisky and, a few good wide receivers, one really good wide receiver in Robinson, and an explosive pass catching back in Cohen. Montgomery's supposed to be the shiz nizzle, and, Anthony Miller is supposed to have his breakout year this year. It's not happening for them. It's not happening for the LA Rams. And it's not happening for all of those teams, for the Eagles as well. I mean, the Eagles may have the most dynamic offense of all of them, but they can't stop anyone on defense.
Well, the Rams did play the horrible Falcons.
They got another cake matchup this week.
Yeah, so maybe they can get well and get right after the 2 weeks, but they did perform well against the Falcons, and my times have gotten pretty hard for the Falcons. I mean, a lot of these teams that were against Brady and whatnot in the past few years and were in the Super Bowl in recent times have fallen on hard times. It's just very funny to see that just it can go by so quickly for some of these teams, yet New England just keeps going along.
It's so funny. Well, first of all, they should have ran the damn ball. uh, on second down in the Super Bowl, and then we wouldn't have the Patriots have one less Super Bowl. But ever since then, they haven't. It's just been down. The toilet's been flushing on the Atlanta Falcons, and and Matt Stafford or not Matt Stafford, their quarterback. What can't think of his
For
name.
Patriots?
No, for the Matt Ryan, the other Matt. Matt Ryan also hurt now. So I mean that's another team that's just a defense that can't stop
anybody.
anybody.
Sanu was just traded to the Patriots.
Sanu was just traded to the Patriots. Yeah, that was there's been a couple of I know there was a couple of trades this morning. That one, and then there was another trade as well. I think Emmanuel Sanders is either about to be traded or was just
San Francisco.
Was just dealt. And so that should be interesting. And that all follows up the trade that took place with the Jaguars sending their top running back or their top cornerback to the Rams for what I think was way too much. 4 draft picks, 2 first-round picks. It's a lot for a defensive back. He's young, he's good, but yeah, I mean, there's that you don't really see a lot of movement, and it's almost for sure that Kenyon Drake's going to get traded. So, I can't imagine that Miami is going to keep Kenyon Drake, and this year they want to see what they have in Watson. So to me, it's a no-brainer that Drake's going to be playing for another team probably after this week.
It looks like it because there's a lot of issues going on right now, like you said. But the biggest issue of all for fantasy football owners, unfortunately, happened in the Kansas City-Denver game that on the surface looked like an easy win for Kansas City. But unfortunately, due to a knee injury to Patrick Mahomes, I believe a dislocated kneecap, if I'm not mistaken, it's going to be out 3 to 4 weeks. So if you're a Patrick Mahomes owner, what do you do?
Right now, you pick up Ryan Tannehill. I mean, Ryan Tannehill looked way better than he had at any point in time during his tenure with the Dolphins, except for possibly, was that 3 years ago, when he had a pretty decent year. The Mahomes thing sucks, but I don't agree with people that it's, from a fantasy perspective, it's far easier to recover from losing Mahomes than it is for someone who's lost Kerryon Johnson, to my eye, because Kerryon Johnson, unless you have one of the 2 backups, McKissick and Ty, are the 2 guys who are going to be big waiver pickups this week. And I'm kicking myself for not picking up McKissick because I almost picked up McKissick 2 weeks ago, even though they're saying that the Ty is going to get most of the carries, but I still think McKissick is the more talented of those 2 running backs. That's an unpopular opinion. I get that, but he is the one who will catch passes and stuff like that, and he's gotten some goal line work. I think that injury is as big as Mahomes, maybe not bigger because Mahomes is Mahomie, right? Doing State Farm commercials. Wasn't he on Madden? Isn't this the Madden curse rearing its ugly head once again?
Kind of like a mini curse on this time. It's just only 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's only 3 weeks, but he didn't look good the week before that either. You could tell that he was hurting, and just what a terrible call. What a horrible call. They had just mentioned maybe 5 minutes before on the broadcast that there was really no way that Mahomes was going to be running the ball unless it was an absolute emergency. There weren't going to be any designed QB runs. What do? They design a QB run, and he's gone. So now we have the Matt Miller show, and this guy's not the worst quarterback in football. He was a good backup when he was on Miami. He can throw the ball. Matt Moore. Did I say Matt Miller? The Matt Moore show. And Matt Moore's a solid guy. I mean, he wasn't playing last year. I think that they signed him off the street because their other quarterback, who also was a former Dolphin, Chad Henne, got hurt. And the funny thing is that, he's probably not the guy that you want to go and look to pick up. Yes, he has weapons. And yes, it was nice to see Tyreek Hill still score a touchdown, albeit against not the greatest secondary in the world, but he scored. He did get another long 55-yard touchdown in I think it was the early part of the fourth quarter, late part of the third quarter. So that bodes well for that receiving core. But there's got to be unless you're in one of those leagues like Charles and I are in a league that's very deep where we start 2 quarterbacks, and you're in big trouble in that league. you probably are going to have to pick up Matt Moore if you had Mahomes, and that's if you're able to get the waiver claim on him. That's why waiver claims are so important, that you don't blow them on kickers and defenses and backup running, wide receiver. Backup running backs one thing, but backup wide receivers, you don't want to do that. So Matt Moore might be the guy you have to pick up, but there's most leagues have guys like, there's Gardner Minshew is available in like 25% of leagues. Ryan Tannehill is available in over 50% of leagues. He's going to be a hot pickup this week. And I think that it was pretty clear, even though I don't think Ryan Tannehill is going to start for long, I really do think that they're going to give the ball back to Marcus Mariota at some point in time. But he seemed to have a chemistry with Corey Davis that Mariota hasn't been able to establish in Davis's third year. They spent the 5th pick in the draft in this guy. I have personal ties to Corey Davis, like my daughters are related to him, so through their mom. So I kind of root for him, but he hasn't really done it. I mean, AJ Brown has looked more impressive than Corey Davis has, but now Tannehill's in there and he's doing good. And it might be perfect because you might have Tannehill for 3 weeks or so before they give back the ball back to Mariota, because he is the high draft pick, right? Where that'll be about the time that Mahomes comes back. So it could be a perfect Band-Aid for you. And the matchups that they have coming up are not the most terrible matchups in the world. So I have to double check, and my math on that, make sure that I'm not just speaking on the side of my head. But Mitch Trubisky has been dropped in a lot of leagues. He's another guy that you could pick up. Jacoby Brissett is owned in only 49% of leagues right now in Yahoo, about 60% in ESPN. That's a big delta. But Jacoby Brissett is somebody that you could look at it. So that's why I think that the QB thing is big, but typically, unless you're in a league that start 2 quarterbacks, you're going to have 7 or 8 QBs that are out there that are starting that you can pick up that can, just what my suggestion would be is, if you're going to pick up a quarterback, don't worry so much about the guy as the matchups, right? So like Ryan Tannehill coming up here, he's got his 3 games that he has coming up are against Tampa Bay, which is the cake matchup, Carolina, which is another decent matchup, and then Kansas City, who you'd expect they'd be losing. And again, you never know, but you'd expect that they would be losing and playing catch up. So that's 3 pretty decent matchups for Ryan Tannehill there. Jacoby Brissett, on the other hand, he's got 3 matchups coming up for the next few weeks where they're going to be playing Denver, Pittsburgh, and then Miami. So not bad there either. Oh, I think we have lost Gerald. Oh boy.
Sorry.
Oh, there he is.
Keep going.
He's back. He's back. But yeah, so I mean, just in closing, to put a bow on that long rant of mine, which if you listen to Voice from Underground, you're used to Dutch's long rants. Kerryon Johnson's a bigger one because you don't have as many people out there to go and pick up as you do with a quarterback. Again, assuming you're not in a league that has 2 quarterbacks.
Once again, it's Jasen Dutch from the Voice of the Underground. You got to check out his awesome show today, along with the good men that are known as TJ and Haas. Haas will light up a cigar for you right on the show. You got to check out their awesome podcast today, Voice from the Underground, available on all major podcast outlets. Well, my friend, it's been a great season so far here in fantasy football. There's a lot of things that people are asking about and talking about, but it seems with the Mahomes injury, it has laid impetus to the fact that there could be a little bit of competition now, and there's not a definitive MVP out there in fantasy football. So I want to hear your thoughts on the best players in the league and the MVP so far to this point.
Well, if we're talking, just offense, it's easily Christian McCaffrey. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is your MVP at this point in time. He got less than 50 yards combined and still scored 2 to 3 touchdowns. The guy can do no freaking wrong. He's unbelievable. He's, and it sucks to say this, but I think a lot of people pushed him down to like the 3rd pick because he's still the white guy, which is interesting, but because it's usually the opposite of that. It's the opposite thing that happens with quarterbacks, right? When you have a quarterback of color, sometimes people will push them down because they'll figure, he doesn't really have an arm. It's sort of the same thing with McCaffrey. But I mean, because he went 3rd in 3rd or 4th in most fantasy drafts, it was pretty solid down the line. Saquon Barkley going number 1, Alvin Kamara going number 2, and then Chubb, Mahomes, or McCaffrey somewhere in that 3, 4, 5 range. So I had the number 1 pick in one of my leagues, and God, I wish I would have took McCaffrey over Saquon Barkley. I just wish that I would have. If I had, I'd probably be 5-2 instead of 3-3. So, or 3-4, I think is my record. Yeah, I'm under 500 in that league. So, but yeah, I mean, it's got to be Christian McCaffrey. On the defensive side of the ball, you have a great candidate in Cleveland, and you have a great candidate on the Rams in Darnold. So, one of those two guys is going to be Defensive Player of the Year. But on the offensive side of the ball, it's especially with Mahomes being out now, there's no question at this point, if he stays healthy, it's McCaffrey. Run CMC.
There you go. Any other standouts you think? I mean, Mahomes, obviously. Matthew Stafford, I think, has been the most improved or the biggest surprise when it comes to fantasy football. But Is there anyone out there? Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson.
Jackson. Okay, hold on. Hold your horses. Gerald, great point. Jackson is the truth. Told you this before. I wish I would have taken him in any league. I wish I had some stock in that guy. He has just totally blown it away. And by the way, so is Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson are very similar quarterbacks. I think Kyler Murray, believe it or not, slightly better arm, even though he's smaller than Lamar Jackson. But, those two guys have both been just outrageous. And Lamar Jackson has had a great year. I don't think he's in the MVP conversation. See hiccups here. But I do think that I don't think anybody's holding a candle at this point to run CMC unless something very drastic happens at this point. And
how much stock do you take for the second half of the season in someone like Aaron Rodgers, who is finally just I don't want to say he's been in the doldrums, but he's had very unimpressive numbers up until the past couple weeks. Then all of a sudden, especially this past weekend, he's turned it on. Could that be a precursor for him dominating in the second half of the season for fantasy football owners?
Unfortunately so, because I'm a Bears fan, so I hate the Packers. So put your money on the Packers, because I hate them. But I mean, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback. People slept on him a little bit this year in fantasy drafts, as they well should. I mean, he's getting a little bit older, but he's had a lot of injuries on that team, though. I mean, you've got some question marks in the backfield there as far as who's going to be the lead dog. Their number 1 receiver has missed some time. They lost a pretty promising rookie right before the season started in Equinomia St. Brown. They've been a little bit banged up, and they obviously lost some players on defense. They lost Clay Matthews. So, there were some question marks on the Packers, but of course, much like the St. Louis Cardinals, you just put that uniform on and you suddenly become better than you were before. And it's mind-numbing to me, but that's just the way that it is. So yeah, look for the Packers to probably win all but maybe 2 games the rest of the year. If you're starting them in, if you're in like a confidence pool or something like that, definitely go for the Packers. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is going to have 6 touchdowns every week. I would say that, he's probably going to average 2, but that's still going to blow away most guys, especially with the issues that the Rams and the Browns have been having.
Yeah,
because those 2 quarterbacks were both typically, maybe not Goff, but Mayfield was typically taken before Rodgers. We saw how that goes.
I have seen that, but I am very happy to see his progression, because in case I'm not digging what Deshaun Watson is doing, but he's been playing admirably, so it's hard to get him out of the lineup, but at least I have Mr. Aaron Rodgers as a backup, so that's definitely a nice cushion to have right there, just in case he gets injured or you just performance issues or what have you. So very good for Aaron Rodgers owners that he's kind of woken up out of the doldrums from the earlier part of the season. It looks like a good progression is ahead for him. Couple last things I want to talk to you about before we head on out, and one is football related, and that is this. We've talked about a lot in the past about some of the great teams that are in the NFL right now. We've talked about, of course, Kansas City, New England. We even mentioned some in the past weeks about San Francisco, their amazing defense, also as well some of the numbers Jimmy Garoppolo is putting out there. But one team we really haven't touched on, we've only mentioned their quarterback just on a couple of occasions, and that's the Buffalo Bills. So for fantasy football owners, is there any real options on the Buffalo Bills? They're certainly playing well, but when you go ahead and you check it out for fantasy football owners, is it more of a team thing or is it a player thing?
Well, Singletary is a good talent. Allen's Josh Allen is pretty decent. I think he's a decent quarterback. Outside of that, they don't really have a lot. There's not a lot to offer there. In the wide receiver corps, there's not a lot to offer there beyond Singletary, and he's not even really lighting it up either. You know what I mean? They're scoring 1 to 2 touchdowns a game. They barely beat Miami. And I mean they ended up beating them by more than, but I mean that game was very close, right?
They look good this weekend, though.
They did look good this weekend, yeah. But again, Buffalo also hasn't really played anybody. Are they playing the Chargers this week? I think so. That's going to be an interesting game because the Chargers. If you would have asked me preseason, I would have wrote that down as a win for the Chargers. But boy, how the Chargers' fortunes have changed too. Keenan Allen. You were talking about after the second week that Keenan Allen was like the best player ever born. And he hasn't done anything since then. And they can't figure it out with the running game. Eckler has been just tremendous, and he continues to be. I think he's a far better running back than Melvin Gordon. I've never liked Melvin Gordon. I've said that before. I don't hate him, but I'm not super high on Gordon. So it's going to be an interesting one between the Chargers and the Bills. But the Bills are just one of those teams where there's nothing sexy there. You know what I mean? There's no Holly Berry, Jessica Alba-ness on that team, just to use a female metaphor. The Me Too mob's going to come after me, I'm sure, but it's just that there's really nobody on that team that is going to win you your league. Their kicker Hauschka is not even good, because he doesn't doesn't get the opportunities to kick very many field goals. And you would think usually when you have a team that is like scoring under 20, that the reason they're scoring under 20 is because they're getting stifled around the 15, 17 yard line a lot. And that usually would lead to a lot of field goals. But Hauschka's not even putting up points. So, their defense is startable. That might be the best thing you can own on the and by the way, freaking Patriots defense, again, insanity. I mean, it's like if you have the Patriots defense, you're probably in first or second place in your league, and you might not even have a good team. It's just absurd what the Patriots defense is doing.
This is true, my friend. This is all too true. Once again, I'm talking to Jasen Dutch from Voice from the Underground. One last question before we head on out, and that is this. What is going on in your world when it comes to Voice from the Underground?
I'm going to answer that, but I want to say one other quick thing. Pick up your running back's freaking handcuff. Learn from the mistakes of people who own Kerryon Johnson right now. Own your running back's handcuffs. Especially if you have roster space. This is like my advice for the week. I have one league where I'm 6-1 and I'm doing very well in that league. Not to, but my other 2 leagues suck. But that league I'm doing very good. And I have McCaffrey in that league. I have Jacobs in that league, and I have both of their backups, Bonifant or whatever his name is in Carolina, and Washington on the Raiders. And then I have both Miami running backs. Though one of them, Drake, as I mentioned before, will probably be gone soon. I'm only starting 2 of those guys, but the point of the matter is go get your running backs backups, please, for the love of God, because if you don't get them, somebody else is going to pick them up off waivers, when your guy goes down. And it's so much easier just to plug in your handcuff than it is to get desperate. So pick up your running back's handcuff. Now, back to Voice from the Underground. We've got some cool stuff going on. We had a paranormal investigator, ghost hunter by the name of J.C. Phillips, who is sorry, I'm a little sniffly today. Who was on our show the other day? Obviously Halloween themed. We're very original in the underground. So he came on and we talked a lot of cool stuff about some hauntings and some stuff that he has experienced. Someone, with a ghost grabbing his leg. And was it the ghost or was it the guy behind him who thought he had a cute butt? Who knows? But it's a lot of fun. What we do on Voice from the Underground, if you have never watched or listened, is we basically juxtapose politics with pop culture. We talked a little bit about Trump's, I'll use the other finger because it's a family show, this little thing where he went like this. with the middle finger the other day to the female astronaut. So we'll talk a lot of that. And next week, we have a really cool show coming out. Actually, next week's going to be a fantastic show because we have Matt Delhauer coming on the show. Matt Delhauer is an amazing storyteller. He's really into psychology. He gets deep into movies. He's very into social issues, and just a really, really intelligent guy, very well spoken. We had him on for our Black Panther episode about a year ago, and he is going to be on this upcoming week talking about the I think it was 1978 John Carpenter's Halloween, the original, which is just it's a horror movie, but it's just a really deep psychological thriller, at least for the first 45% of the movie. This is not Jason Voorhees slash 'em up stuff. This is, you get to see the demise of this character and how he falls into, as a child, and becomes what he becomes. Very similar to the Joker movie, in fact. So we're very much looking forward to talking to Matt Delhauer this week. And also we'll probably talk about that awesome new Star Wars trailer too. So in addition to Trump and what's going on with the debates and all that jazz.
Already got my tickets, my friend.
You know what, though? I want to know something. Tell me about what's going on with the Pop Culture Cosmos, because that show is the best podcast on earth.
No. You're too kind. Actually, no, yours is also very, very awesome in and of itself. I can just tell people that our Friday show, the PCC Multiverse, we're just going to go ahead and have Marcus de la Garza coming on the show to talk at length about one of his favorite shows that's coming back onto the air on Amazon in December, The Expanse. Plus, also, we will also, if you wanted more conversation on the Star Wars trailer, we're going to go ahead and talk about that, plus a lot more, including Terminator Dark Fate. And what about you go see it after all?
Are you guys, just curious, are you guys going to talk Watchmen at all? Because we're definitely talking about that next week. The first episode, I had no idea what I was tuning into. And that was pretty amazing.
I know I will see it between now and Thursday.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet?
Go ahead and tape it. I know I'm going to probably see it tomorrow. I've already got it geared up. I've already seen a lot of the reviews for it. I know what it. I pretty much have a good idea of it. So yeah, absolutely, we can go ahead and talk about that. I'm not sure if Josh is going to be able to see it, but I will go ahead and ask him if he can and see. Well, we could talk about that as well on the Friday show. So definitely looking forward to it. It's going to be a very good show. Yeah. So I'm hearing that. And then Terminator Dark Fate was something that when the trailers first came out, we just totally turned it off because we had no idea. We just didn't really have any interest any longer in the Terminator series, but the reviews are pretty solid. So has that changed our minds? We're going to talk about that as well on the Friday show. Well, my friend, it's been great talking to you about fantasy football. Any last thoughts on the way out?
No, but my brain is messing with me right now. I believe, and I want to double check here because I said that the Chargers were playing the Bills, and they're not. I was thinking, I was like, wait a minute, the Chargers aren't playing the Bills. My Bears are playing the Chargers. The Bills are playing the Eagles. So that should be an interesting game because you've got a really good defensive team going up against a really good offensive team and a really bad offensive team in the Bills going against a terrible defensive team. So, the Bills probably should win that game, but what's the score going to be, Gerald? Is it going to be, what do you do with your fantasy players? Do you start a guy like Nelson Aguilar or, one of the other, Alshon Jeffrey on the Eagles? Because I'm not sure what the score that I could easily see that game being 30-27. And I could easily see that game being 7-3. I have no idea where it's going. So that one's going to be.
I would take a look at the weather. I think the weather will have a lot to do with it.
That weather. There was a couple of crazy weather games last week, so we're getting in that time of year.
There you go. Absolutely. So check that out, fantasy football owners. The weather in some of the major markets that the teams are playing in. Make sure you go ahead and check that out. Hopefully later this week, I will get finally Chris Lardieri back on the show. We've been having some problems trying to meet up as far as time is concerned, so I do apologize for that. But yes, I hope to have him on. I know he's eager to get back on. We're just going to try and see if we can make a time work so we can go ahead and record the show for later this week. But otherwise, my friend, it's been great talking to you. As always, if you have any questions out there and you want to go ahead and you want to send them over to us, we'll get them answered for you. You just want to go ahead and email us isfantasyfootball@yahoo.com. That's isfantasyfootball@yahoo.com. You can also reach out to us on Twitter at PopCultureCosmos, or also as well at Inside Sports FF. That's at Inside Sports FF on Twitter. And I know you've got a Twitter handle as well if they want to talk to you directly.
At Dutch, like the nationality, Jasen. At Dutch Jasen, but Jasen, as you can see on the screen, is spelled Jasen.
Fair enough. Even though people can't see it as they're listening at home, it's Jasen.
Yeah.
There you go. Had to be a smart ass on the way out.
That's all right. I have to be one the whole day. So
there you go. Yes, you certainly take the cake on that one, well above what I can do, my friend. But
yes,
I've heard many episodes of the VFU. Yes. All right, my friend.
I feel sorry for you.
No. It's a great show. Great show. All right, my friend. It's been an awesome show here on Inside Sports Fantasy Football. I cannot thank you enough for being part of it once again. Hoping to get you and Charles Barr in the same place at the same time on the same airwaves. Hopefully we can do that as early as next week as you go ahead and do that little Trump thing right there for you. So, you know what? I'll just leave that for the video right there and let people go ahead and catch it on our YouTube channel. So there you go. But all right. Oh, and one last thing on the way out. We now are available pretty much wherever you can get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, and pretty much every other major podcast outlet that we're on. If we're not on a podcast outlet and you need us to go ahead and be on one, we can go ahead and submit to any podcast outlets out there. Just let us know. isfantasyfootball@yahoo.com. Yep. All right, my friend. It's been a great episode. Cannot thank you enough for being a part of it. And we'll catch you next week right here on Inside Sports Fantasy Football.